Ladies and gentlemen, we are back after a 1 week hiatus to talk about the one thing I detest the most, movies. I'm here joining us with my only two movie review friends that I know, or the only ones that will show up here on this show. My good buddy, Mr. Rob Motto, who's joining us here tonight. How you doing, Rob?
Oh, pretty good. I think Emilia Clarke is not that attractive. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, we'll get to touch on that in a little bit. Then, of course, our good buddy, Miss Rick Aragon. How's the haircut working with you there, Rick?
It is working great. I'm tired of looking like an extra from Jesus Revolution.
Now you just look like an extra from Me, Myself, and Irene.
Well, the lady said that she was going to make it shorter. She was going to try for something different.
Yeah, you definitely look like you should own a truck if you don't already. So I'll just throw that out there.
I have an Explorer. I don't know if that an SUV. I don't know if that works.
Yeah, it's close enough, but it's not a truck. So let me go ahead and welcome in our good friends here in the chat joining us once again. Mr. Duke Nukem joining us in the chat tonight. Doba Fett's joining us once again this week. Cocaine Bear should be Attack of the Crack Addicted Bear. Well, I mean, we'll get to that one later on when we talk about that film. Alex vs. Evil joining us here. Our good buddy Cole Classic Cage, who has started a second Discord server. I don't know why, but apparently she has. So good luck with that one. And our good buddy Osnon is also joining us here as well. So welcome back, everyone. Obviously, I've had some, issues behind the scenes, some, personal things that I've been trying to keep together. Things are going well. So I thank you all for your wishes, everyone who reached out with me this week. I'm trying to see what's going to happen in the future because I may have to take on a new project, which is going to require a couple more nights from me throughout the course of the week. So I'm going to see about how we can slide some of these review nights together so that it's all syncs up to everyone's schedule. So we may be moving some things around, but I haven't 100% decided yet. So just stay in touch with the channel, whether I'm on Twitter, here on YouTube. I'll give you guys updates if I make any decisions right now. But for right now, we're here back on a Monday night, and I got a lot to talk about because obviously last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, you could say, Mr. Rob Motto was sick, so he bailed out of our conversation regarding the new guys. I still want to catch up on that one, but I feel like we got a lot of movies that we didn't talk about over the last few weeks, so let's get those out of the way. So we were here last week, so now we're going to talk about some of these films this week. But before we get into the movie discussion of the night, I feel like there's a few things that we need to catch up on. One, Rob, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, apparently you got yourself in some trouble for implying that Emilia Clarke isn't nearly as attractive as a lot of people think that she is. And I saw the picture that was going around that everyone else was pointing out, and all I was thinking of is this, I mean, she never personally did it for me. So I don't really have what dog in that fight one way or another about whether she's super hot or if she's just mid looking. But yeah, what did you do to get yourself to add it on to another ban list? I think you have like about 1,000 now at this point, right?
Yeah, I think I have close to 1,000 people blocking me on Twitter, and then I pointed this out to, I think it was Trappy the other day. It was just like on my newer account, the one that's only been active for like less than 2 years, I have like over 300 people who have blocked me. So I'm pretty good at getting under people's skin and irritating them. Sometimes it's for fun, and sometimes it's just me, just how I naturally am. But yeah, Emilia Clarke, like I've never thought, because you look to see how she looks, not as Daenerys Targaryen, not all dolled up, and it's like, oh, okay, she looks like kind of like a girl next door almost, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just like, she's like a very average looking girl. Today I was a little bit more, I think, strong with my wording, where I was like she's ugly, and and that's more in the parlance of like being a leading lady, being like a Hollywood beauty. It's like, yeah, she just absolutely does not do it for me, and I just got a lot of shit for it. And it's like, hey, look, I'm not an actress. I'm not somebody who makes my living off of my looks. So, that's where it's like, it's not an apples to apples comparison, guys. I know I'm ass ugly. I get it. It's fine. I don't do a great job trimming my facial hair. It is what it is. I'm a lazy fucker.
But you're still mid. That's the takeoff here for this whole conversation. Well, Rick, what do you have to add to our Emilia Clarke discussion? Does she appeal to you whatsoever?
Is she the one from Me Before You? I'm not sure who she is.
She's in a Christmas chick from movie with Harry Golding like a couple years ago.
She was in what?
Some like Christmas
Oh,
movie.
oh, Last Christmas. Yes, I know who she is.
Okay, see, I knew that. I don't know why you would know it from that, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Every year I review a Christmas movie on Christmas Day, and my mom took me to see that one.
Yeah.
So,
So for the record, it wasn't Game of Thrones, Solo, Star Wars movie, or any other, or the Terminator movie that she was in. None of those ring a
was
bell.
she
It
the
was the
Terminator? Was she which Terminator was she in?
Dark Fate.
no, Genesis. That was the one where she
Genesis.
played young Sarah Connor, which looked nothing like the original Sarah Connor at all.
No, I don't remember her in that. And what was the other one? I never saw Game of Thrones.
Okay.
So I think she's like, was she supposed to be like a woman, right? Like the one, the Dragon Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just go with that.
She's she strikes me as kind of perky, but not a great not a great beauty
Yeah.
by any. I don't think. I mean, she's not like Vivian Lee or Ava Gardner. Those I would consider great beauties. I mean, she's fine. And just for the record, Rob, I don't think you're ugly. I mean, just
No, it's just all
take
the
that for
people that are fans of Amelia Clark felt the need to
The
post my
Simps.
profile picture as if to say, "Why are you talking?" And it's like, "Hey, I don't make my money off of my looks. Okay, if I did, you might have a point, but you don't. So it's like it's fine, but it's just like this is the stuff I
Yeah.
court every day, kind of being a troll. So
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I have nothing to add to this. I mean, she's not a gorgeous woman. She's not my idea of this gorgeous of a great beauty, but she's fine. I mean, I would judge her. I mean, she always strikes me as very perky, and she annoys me when she does these perky roles, like in Me Before You and Last Christmas. What was the other ones that you mentioned? I don't remember.
Terminator,
I, I don't
Star
remember.
Wars, all those little small projects.
What was she in Star Wars?
She was in the Han Solo movie that Disney did about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. No, I barely remember that. I mean, I know that Alden Ehrenreich is making a comeback now, so that's
Well, was it really a comeback though?
for him. It was a comeback. For him, it was a comeback.
well, he got a bunch of shit for that Solo movie when to me that really wasn't his fault. They didn't have a good idea for the movie, and that's why it failed, not because he sucked.
And to be fair to him, they like the only person that anyone in Lucasfilm wants to throw under the bus for the failures of Star Wars over the last 10 years is that guy. Like he's the only one who they've publicly thrown under the bus. Be like, oh yeah, he wasn't great, but everything else we've done has been fucking amazing, which is just an outright lie. But I hate the fact that he's the only one that gets crushed under that boot. Let me say this. So I wanted to parlay this into kind of our talk of the SAG Awards last night. Now I'm pretty sure nobody saw it because if you hadn't seen the ratings, no, absolutely nobody watched this award show last night. But Everything Everywhere All at Once won a bunch of awards. Yay, great for them, I guess. But then we've had this argument over the last couple of days about who's going to win Best Picture not Best Picture, Best Male Actor. It seems like everyone in our sphere seems to think that Brendan Fraser, like this is his year. Like for The Whale, and it seems like it's more of a sentimental thing towards Fraser than any of his actual performance in the movie itself. And then obviously, Rob, you and Rick seem to believe that the kid Austin Butler for was it Elvis?
Elvis
it seems is the front runner here. So I mean, I just kind of picked this like, yeah, he played Elvis in the movie. They tend to go with biopics more than just regular performances. It's like, what's the case here for Brendan Fraser for The Whale?
I just saw it yesterday. So I just saw The Whale yesterday. It's what I call a victim narrative. He's kind of plays this sad sack guy who is just he lives a miserable life. The entire movie is it's 2 hours of misery of you watching this guy slowly killing himself. And it's just, I don't know. It's just a miserable way to spend 2 hours. I'll say this: Brendan Fraser does do a good job, but there's nothing redeeming about this movie. It's a lot what like C.S. Johnson says about like whatever postmodern like movies or whatever, where it's like there's no hope for redemption. There's no hope for like turning over a new leaf and looking towards being hopeful. There's just none of that in here. And his daughter plays an absolute bitch. I mean, an absolute, like, she's like a 14, 15-year-old, like, twat, like, every moment of the movie, all the way to the end when, like, Brendan Fraser's crying and, like, just doing this over-the-top emoting, where it's like, dude, I get it. You want that Oscar really badly, and you're in a 400-pound fat suit, and you look disgusting, but holy shit, dude, it's really sad, because, like, I like the story of Brendan Fraser coming back. I'm encouraged by it, but this role is such an Oscar bait worthy kind of piece of crap movie that I feel sorry that he took it. So I think that he does a good job, but the material is so victim oriented and filled with grievance politics that it's hard to sort of get past that.
All right. I will say that I've not seen The Whale. I missed it in theaters, and I don't think it's going to be in the second run. I know that people think that when he won the SAG, that he's won, that it's all over. There are two things that people need to remember before they crown him, and obviously we don't until they open the envelope. One, The Whale is not nominated for Best Picture. Elvis is. And as you pointed out, Jacob, the Academy loves biopics, especially for lead actor. They almost always gravitate toward biopics. So I mean, even something that they hated, like Bohemian Rhapsody, like film Twitter despised that movie. People that I know actually like it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was as I said, it's a warts and all biopic of Freddie Mercury minus most of the warts. It was more about we made this movie, how we made that movie. I mean, how we made that song, how we made this song, how we made how we came up with this. Barely touched on his private life. Of course, I also don't think Taron Egerton should have been nominated for Best Actor, and I'm glad he wasn't. It was a somewhat, I mean, a good imitation, but a little bit over the top at times. So again, so not having seen The Whale, I can't comment on it, but it's not going to be. It's not going to. I still don't see how Brendan Fraser. Yeah, he's got that comeback narrative, and a lot of people do like him personally, but it's not up for Best Picture. It's not up for Best Adapted Screenplay, I believe, or original. I'm not sure which. I'm not sure which category it would fall under. It's not up for Best Screenplay, whichever one it is. Elvis has more nominations, so more people would probably watch it. It's going to be close, but I still think that Butler will win, especially because he did win BAFTA, and I think that one has a larger voting block of voters than maybe the SAG does.
And then this is actually a great little segue here, because I was going to ask this question. Maybe I'm being a little too cynical here. Maybe we're all a little bit too cynical, but do you think that Fraser still gets this nomination if his character was not gay? Do you think that played a role in the movie, or do you think that his performance is just that good and it stood out?
It does check a box, they're the whole, like, in terms of what the criteria you have to meet now to get nominated.
Yeah.
You do have to kind of look at it and say, well, it does sort of check a box. It does sort of, fulfill that requirement or whatever, what have you. I want to say, like, I think Austin Butler just gave the best performance out of all the people nominated. So I think he deserves to win. Now that's not what always happens. Certainly,
yeah.
Michael Keaton was robbed, in my opinion.
Yes.
Of winning Best Actor versus Eddie Redmayne, back in 2016, or 2015, excuse
me. But Eddie Redmayne had a much better campaign. That's what won it for him, not the actual performance. It was the campaign, and also the fact that he was British, biopic, playing disabled, which for some reason people considered some sort of revelatory performance. It was not, but he campaigned hard for it. He won for his campaign. To answer the question, I think he probably would have, because the Academy also loves these transformative roles where you change your physical appearance. And Brendan Fraser, while not looking as perhaps fit and as muscular as in the Mummy days, he's still a relatively decent looking man.
I don't think you understand, Rick. This guy is so fat He's he's got like
he looks like your average 50-year-old man. Let's just put it that way.
In the whale or in real life?
In the whale.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen pictures, and that's probably why I think it's going to win Best Makeup. But I think he would win. I mean, he would get nominated because it's a transformative role. The Academy also loves transformative roles, and Fraser also has that kind of comeback narrative. Butler has the biopic, and he also has this young upstart type, um, role where he's he's starting to make a name for himself. It's curious though that Colin Farrell is all but out. Nobody talks about him surprising. He's lost.
I wouldn't be surprised if he just steals it from everybody. Like
no, I don't see it. I don't see it. He lost in, it's not technically his home ground because he's Irish, but he lost BAFTA, he lost SAG. Like my favorite Angela Bassett, I don't see how you can come back from losing those two and still win the Oscar.
So you don't think they're going to pull like a 0-4 Red Sox and just come back from a 3-0 lead deficit?
No.
Well, I tell you what, before you shift into the movie review portion, there's one more rant that I need to go on because this has been pissing me off for the last few days. And this is, what are you doing? Anyway, so this has been pissing me off for the last few days. And
sign of the cross, people. Does anyone not see any Catholic?
No, I was like, you with a water bottle. It's like that wasn't the cross that I was questioning. It was like, why you? Oh. Anyway, so baseball, right? It feels like all four major sports in this country are going down the shitter at a rapid pace right now, like all four of them. So I don't know if this is just a spring training thing that they're testing out for the regular season in the future, or if this is just going to be the rules now. But this whole thing with the pitch count and the hitters count and calling people out with the bases loaded with the bottom of the ninth, and because the pitcher didn't look up, I mean the batter didn't look up at the pitcher, so that's a delay a game or some nonsense like this. It's like, it feels like to me for the last few years, baseball has been pandering to people who hate the game of baseball and want to change everything about it fundamentally. So this is one of these stupid baseball rules. I'm pretty sure you guys seen the clip now. I think it was the Red Sox and the Braves a couple days ago. Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, spring training game. The batter did not look at the pitcher in enough time, and they called him out, and the game ended in a tie in the bottom of the ninth with the bases loaded. Everyone in the entire stadium is booing their asses off. The umpire is looking like, yeah, look, I know this is shit, but it's my job. There's nothing I can do. The managers are like sitting there, and it's like these idiots are killing the game. I don't know what's going on here with baseball, because it's not just baseball. I look at basketball too. What the hell is going on with basketball? I just saw this note right here saying that the NBA is looking at implementing a score target for overtime games that would prevent long games and prevent people from playing too many minutes. Because the problem with the NBA now is that nobody actually plays defense. A couple nights ago, the Clippers and the Kings both scored like 140 points each in 4 quarters. And they went to an overtime where it was like 150 to 160 something. So now they're complaining about their games going too long because no one's playing any defense whatsoever. They're just shooting up jump shots and shit. So it's like, what has happened to American sports? Like what has happened to it? It's like hockey is doing everything to burn their bridges with their fan base. We've all know what football has become over the last few years. It's just a joke. It's like, Rob, you know is better than anybody else. Me and you grew up sports junkies. We watch all these sports growing up for years, and just watching the quality. Not even just like, you can hate the politics of a lot of things that are going on, but it's like the actual games themselves now are starting to become unwatchable. It's like, what are we doing here?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Basketball, but they kind of predicted this. You know, the whole like the constant, I mean, like free agency, the constant moving of franchises, the constant changes to the foundational aspects of the games themselves. We've seen this play itself out over the last 20 years to a ridiculous degree. And so like, look, I still love the NFL. I'm still a big fan of it. But this past year, there was a lot of very fishy outcomes. There was a lot of, timely penalties that, seemed to benefit one team over the other. So, and look, I watched baseball growing up. I've sort of seen that the sort of decline of the sport over the last 20 years. So I guess they're trying to implement the pitch count, the pitch timer or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Like you have 15 seconds to get rid of the ball or something. Well, Rick can correct me. I see him shaking his head, so maybe that's not correct. But the NBA, nobody plays defense anymore. What the regular season is 82 games long, and everybody knows games don't matter until like March. You know what I mean? So like teams start
honestly in the
NBA position.
In the NBA, games don't matter until about May. That's where it's become now.
Until the playoffs, basically. Yeah. So and I don't know what the answer is, other than to say that I don't know if it's because these things have become globalized. I don't, like all these other considerations come into play for other markets, or hey, we need to be able to play in places other than the United States of America. I don't know. I don't know if that's why these things have sort of changed over this relatively short time frame, but I wish they'd go back. You know what I'm saying? I wish defense would come back to the NBA. I wish the NFL, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I wish the NFL would stop. I mean, it's going to be like two-hand touch soon, you know, with all of the like,
I hated the whole idea of, no, we have to make sure that both teams get the ball in overtime. It's like, why? If you can't stop someone from scoring, then the game's over. Like, you're not entitled to have possession of the ball. It's like, oh, yeah, what happens if one team goes in there and score a touchdown, the other team just loses? Yes, that's the whole point of sudden death, is score and win. So, and then I'll start with you, Rick, because obviously you're the baseball guy here. This is your sport as much as it is anybody else. So I'm just like watching what's become of Major League Baseball. It's like, are we going to get to a point now where I'm going to have to start watching like Korean and like Japanese baseball just to find what the sport used to look like that I actually enjoyed? Because Duke brought it up here. That's why I watch European sports. It's like, yeah, if you like basketball, you can't watch, if you're a true basketball fan, you can't watch today's NBA anymore. It's terrible. Everyone gives up like 115 points a game. Some teams are scoring now like 150 points. There's no even pretending to play any defense anymore. I think they just had the All-Star game maybe like a week or two ago where one of them almost scored 200 points. And it's like what are we doing here with any of these sports? Rick, what are your thoughts on what the hell that baseball has become?
Well, it's based on a very misguided idea that the reason people aren't watching baseball is because the games are too long, and so they want to quote speed up the game, make it faster, so they could get more people to watch, and it won't take as long. Listen, baseball fans understand that it's a long game. They understand that it could go on long after the 9 innings.
Yeah.
I've seen this because they already put this in the minor leagues. We've seen the pitch clock. Although, to be perfectly frank, I think most of us, I think even the players, pretty much ignored it. I don't think it was something that a lot of them focused. I mean, in the beginning, I think some guys were called out for running out the clock, more or less. But I think after a while, I think we pretty much ignored it. We hated having the runner on second when there was a tie game, because we just felt, that's not, that's not baseball to us. And now you're having it here, but the people who they're trying to court to watch the games, they're not going to watch if the game goes any faster, because they're just not interested in the game. The game they could cut the innings to 5, and they're not going to care. They could make it 3. You could make it 3 innings. They're still not going to watch. Baseball is supposed to be long, and really, there's only one person to blame, and we know who it is.
The Commissioner Shithead.
Yes, Manfred. Manfred, who has mismanaged and bungled practically everything that has come across his desk. There's not one baseball fan that I know of who likes him and who wants him there. We are all desperate to get rid of him, but for some reason, he just hangs on. Kind of a side
It's
note.
like NFL fans with Goodell. Goodell for like the last 15 years gets like viciously booed anytime he has to give the Lombardi Trophy to the Super Bowl winner. It's clear nobody likes him, but he still sticks around and makes the game worse. And everyone just put up with it.
Yeah, as a side note, he kind of reminds me of our city manager.
Well, I mean, and I don't know how Major League Baseball works, but in the NFL, the commissioner is like his boss are all the owners.
Yeah.
And like all they really care about
be
is
the same.
record profits. And guess what? The NFL has been incredibly profitable over the last, 30 years at least. And so it's hard for them to be like, oh, hey, we want a new commissioner, because it's like business is good right now.
Well, baseball's not that it's not as profitable. So I
Right.
don't know why people
Well, not
I don't know
compared
why
to football and basketball. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why the teams are or why the owners are hanging on to Manfred, but there has not been one person who thinks well of him, and he should have been gone a long time ago. But he hangs on to power. And with football, since I'm not that well versed in football, I am curious. Maybe you guys can correct me. Wasn't it that in the Pro Bowl, or there was another type of special football event where they suggested doing flag football, where
they actually did play flag football this year during the Pro Bowl. Like I don't know if this is the NFL or Disney or a combination of the two, but they promoted a women's flag football league this year during the Pro Bowl, and they actually had like a couple of women's flag football games during Pro Bowl this year.
Why?
Exactly, Rick. Why?
I mean, I'm not a football.
Why is ESPN promoting the WNBA and women's college basketball as if anyone cares about either one of those two sports?
This WNBA, did this not emerge after the women's team won the Olympics some years back, and they decided, oh, people actually care about female basketball, so we're going to fund this league? And
no one's ever cared about women's basketball. It might have been off the back of like when the women's soccer team was popular, like almost 10 years ago, when they won like the Women's World Cup, and they tried to push other women's sports off the backs of that. But women's basketball has never been popular at any point in time in the 25 years it's been around now.
Well, didn't we also just have the Women's World Cup this year as well? I'm assuming it was in
no, you had the Men's World Cup. I think the Women's World Cup is this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know who like really. I don't want to say cares. I'm sure some people do, but it's not appealing. I mean, the people who go, they're going to watch something else. And yes, the answer to your question, Jacob, you probably will have to eventually go to Korea or watch Korean or Japanese baseball. I'd like to go in person. God willing, I'll be able to. But no, we've seen this in baseball, and when we go to a spring training game, we're probably, or hopefully we'll enjoy it, but I'm also a little trepidatious if it gets to that. These are great moments when, even if it's just a spring training game, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, and you end the game that way. Of course, the real baseball fans are going to be angry.
Yeah, because you rob them of the drama of the game. They've been sitting there for like 2.5 hours leading up to that point. It's the bottom of the ninth, bases are loaded. It's high drama, and it's like, nope, the Reds just took the game away from you. Everyone go home. See you later. Game's over now.
And that's the thing. Again, you're not going to attract new fans, and you're only alienating old fans. It's just as it is in movies when you do remakes, or when you do updates tailored for modern audiences. You're not going to appeal to new fans. You're driving away old fans, and then the owners and the teams wonder why people don't watch. If people aren't going to watch baseball, it's because you're driving them away.
I remember years ago, there was a game in Boston. I don't remember exactly who they were playing, but I think it went about like maybe 15 innings, somewhere around that. And it was about maybe midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, but there were still fans there watching the game. And what the Red Sox did for the fans who actually stayed to continue to watch the game is that they brought everyone out. They told everyone to move down to the lower levels so they can get a better view for the rest of the game. And they brought them all free food, the food that they were going to like toss out and whatnot. They brought everybody free food just for staying at the ballpark, right? Those are one of the little things that you used to do for like sports like this. But now, because everyone has the attention span of a gnat, everyone's like, oh, I got to sit here for 2.5 hours to watch a baseball game. Make it shorter. I don't want to be here all day. Like, well, don't go to the fucking game.
And this is to a lesser degree, because I mean, going to a sporting event is a bigger commitment than going to the movies. But it's the same idea. It's the movie's going to start at a certain time. We have to get to the theater. We have to get to our seats. We we have to go through the concession line, and it's part of a commitment. It's the same thing as renting a movie. I mean, again, to a lesser degree, because again, a sporting event is a much bigger commitment. But when you go to rent a movie at the video store, you're committing to that movie that you're gonna watch it. You know what I mean? It's not, you only have a certain amount of time before you have to return it. There's a lot of shit that generationally, and that like having the instant gratification, you lose a lot of experiences simply by not having to commit to that experience, and that's, I don't know, that's something that hopefully won't get lost over time, but is in danger of being lost.
That is something that baseball has, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy it. There have been games where the team has been down like 5 runs, 6 runs, and the bottom of the ninth, and they've actually managed to win. And we've stayed. Gabe and I, or someone that's with me, we will almost always stay until the end, because we understand it's our commitment. We understand that it could last much longer. Now, sometimes we do have to leave because we'd have to get up early to go to work or something like that. I understand, but by and large, these are all misguided ideas about we're going to speed up the game. They're blaming the length. They're blaming game length as the reason why people are not watching games.
They think that if they somehow artificially make the games like 2 hours and 15 minutes, then all of a sudden the stadiums are going to be packed full of people now, because now they can get in and get out. It's like, no,
that's not the reason. They just don't find anything interesting. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I certainly enjoy going to the games. I enjoy going to all these. I mean, even if I don't understand basketball, I will go. I've been to a UTEP basketball games. I went to like a Mavericks game just to get the experience. I don't know that much about basketball, but I do know that there's not much of an effort to try to stop the other team. It's just run over here, score.
some
shoot,
guy
run to the other side.
Some guy last night, I don't remember the player, I think it may have been Damian Lillard, just scored like 71 points in the game last night. And I'm just kind of like, okay, and it's like it's not impressive to me anymore because no one plays any defense. It's like I'm expecting in the next few years someone's going to score 100 and beat Wilt Chamberlain's record, because what is the defense in basketball anymore? Everyone's scoring 160 games a night, 160 points a night. There's no defense. So why is any of this impressive to me anymore?
My theory is that the current players now are only focused on the number of points that they can get. They're not interested in actually playing basketball. They're interested in padding their numbers so that they look great for future contracts, Hall of Fame. I don't know, but
one of the funniest performances growing up was this guy named Ricky Davis. He was like, he must have been like a precursor, because like this guy was like amazing dunks. Like he could shoot threes, he could score at will. Could not play defense to save his life. And one time he shot off his own backboard to try to get a rebound for a triple double, and he and it completely backfired and whatever. But it's just like that signifies like the current mindset of players, where it's like all they care about is getting their numbers.
Yeah,
and it's not about winning and losing, and they don't give a shit.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's sad, but it's
it is.
It is sad.
It is sad.
All right, we'll say that it's sad, and it's sad that I, who don't follow basketball at all, I didn't know any of the cameos in House Party, that I realized that all they care about is just getting these high numbers so that they could have bragging rights and saying, oh, I scored 100 points, or I scored 80 points, or what have you. They're not interested in actually playing as a team. It's now devolved into my own individual stats, but I'm surrounded with these other guys who are also trying to get individual stats. It's not a team sport anymore.
That's why I like March Madness every year, because that's great team basketball that you see. You don't see a lot of crappy isolation centric offense. It's a team game.
Yep. And then one thing to say about college too is that they're not allowing them to play the NBA style of, oh, we don't need defense. Defense is not important. Just go out there and shoot a three 50 times in a row. It's like they actually make them play the fundamentals of basketball. But like I said, it's sad that it's come to that. But now you have to find like other alternatives because all of the leagues down here are going to crap. So it's like, yeah, if you want baseball, you better go watch Japan or Korea. If you want hockey, you got to go watch Russia. If you like basketball, hey, you better go watch a game in France or something like that, because that's pretty much all you're going to get, because all the values of the game that you loved with growing up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, all that's gone. It's dead. So, yay, American sports.
Well, again, I'm hoping that with baseball, the major league might be slightly different than it is here, the AAA, that eventually these rules will be pretty much ignored or just not as focused on. Initially, they will be. They were when they introduced it in the minor leagues, but I think by this season, or at least by last season,
they're gonna try to keep these rules in place until it really starts fucking up their bottom line. Like people just stop showing up to games, or they're gonna have to like ruin like either a close game, an important game, or like a playoff game. Because imagine if what happened at the spring training game a couple days ago happened during like a Sunday night game between like the Yankees or the Red Sox, or imagine if that happens in a playoff game between the Dodgers and the Giants. Like people are gonna be pissed. People are gonna be seriously fucking pissed, and they're not gonna put up with that shit. So they can keep going out there like no one's gonna care. But it's like, okay, keep fucking around to find out. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's eventually what's going to happen, and they might just quietly rescind those rules. We're hoping. Like I said, everyone I know that sits around me at the baseball games, we hate that rule about having the runner on second. We just hate it because it doesn't seem right. It just seems yeah. And hopefully they're holding on to that one, but hopefully they'll get rid of it. But I don't have much hope for that.
All right, who watched this movie? Who signed up to watch this MCU film?
Oh,
so just you, huh? All right, then. Well, it looks like it'll be just me and you for this review of the latest MCU film, Ant-Man and the Wasp 3. I know Rob really wanted to get out here and watch this movie. It's probably a shame that he missed out on Ant-Man 3 because he was looking so anticipated for this one. Look, you guys pretty much know my thoughts on a lot of these MCU films. Some of my so-called former friends have blocked me for having these opinions about the MCU films. But look, outside of, I would say, maybe 5 movies out of the 31 that have come out so far, most of these movies are just perfectly in the middle of mediocre movies. And then some of them are very, very bad. Which I don't think anything is going to top the Eternals, even though last year's Thor movie came close. But we all know that this was a film that was supposed to be the end of phase 4 of the MCU. But then they panicked because they saw the numbers that the other movies were bringing in. It's like, okay, well, this is going to be the first movie of phase 5 of the MCU. And hey, this movie's going to have Kang the Conqueror. You guys know who Kang the Conqueror is? He's going to be your next Thanos. So really get excited for Kang. Kang is going to be amazing. And all this Jonathan Majors hype, which we will talk about tomorrow night on the Barroom podcast. But this is the whole sell for this film, is that, hey, it's Ant-Man. It's the Avenger that some of you guys know, even though his movies haven't been a huge box office success as compared to some of the other titles. But the Ant-Man property is here. We have your new Avengers level villain. So why aren't people going to watch this movie? Why aren't people gravitating to this film? If you look at last year, Thor 4 was the lowest drawing MCU film out of the 3 that came out. This movie's already about $135 million short of where that film was pacing. So this means that it's probably going to struggle to reach $600 million at this point. Rick, I'll just go ahead and ask you about this film. Was there anything redeeming about what's the most redeeming thing about the MCU at this point? Because it seems like they're just living off of past glory. We're almost 4 years removed from Endgame, and this is only the first time that we're seeing who's supposed to be the next villain of the next 2 or 3 years. And as box office shows, people clearly don't care about this as much as Disney hoped that they would.
Well, I would argue first off that the MCU is the true apex of all human creativity. I mean, it's just the greatest thing ever made in the history of all mankind.
Or we'll ban you if you don't believe that.
Yes, yes. Redeeming qualities in this movie. Um, was that the question? um, well, here I can just mention real quick. I think I nodded off twice. So,
Well,
and Gabe
well,
admitted that he did nod off once at least. What redeeming qualities did this movie have? I don't, I saw this movie last week, and I
yeah.
generally remember very little. And what I do remember is not positive. My biggest takeaway from this is I felt so bad for Michelle Pfeiffer's character because
Why?
Michelle
okay,
Pfeiffer's in this.
yes, Michelle
Yeah,
Pfeiffer is in this.
she's the star of the movie. This movie's about her. This movie's not even about Ant-Man.
Well,
So
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because I thought, this character has been in the quantum realm for 30 years, and I believe she also got snapped or blipped or whatever.
Yeah.
And now she's finally enjoying her life, trying to reconnect with her husband, her daughter, I guess her new granddaughter by way of Scott, and she gets sucked back into this awful world. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm thinking as a character, I spent 30 years of my life stuck in this hellhole, and you, obnoxious teenage girl, sucked me back into a world I did not want. I hated, and now you're forcing me to relive this awful experience. Why did any of them agree to any of this? That's one of my biggest takeaways. Second takeaway: who are these people? I mean, besides Scott Lang, and bless Paul Rudd, who's like I'm assuming in his 50s and still looks quite well preserved for someone of his age.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love Michelle Pfeiffer, but why do we care? Why should we care about any of these people or any of the people in the quantum realm? You could see where they put in that forced comedy. What? I'm sorry. What the hell was Bill Murray doing in this? There was no point to him being there. There was no point to him being there. What they did with Maddock, whatever that thing was, that was. I looked at it. I'm going, did someone slip something in my cherry coke? Because I thought I was almost hallucinating. I thought this cannot be real. These are the visual effects that they went with and said, yes, we're proud of this. The whole thing is just a deep embarrassment, and you can tell. What was it, a 72% drop in the box office from week 1 to week 2? That's not a good sign. And then we stayed to the very end. Do you want like the was it the end credit scene where we get what is it? I guess some kind of connection with Kang, and then it's kind of like in the look like the Victorian era, where Loki and Owen Wilson, whatever character he's playing, is in this. Look, the only people that are genuinely going to care about all these future Phase 5 films are the people who bother to watch any of the TV shows. And that's the curious thing. That here, that's the curious thing. The people that I know who loved Loki, the TV show, they didn't go to see Ant-Man, even though Loki pops up in it. Because they like Loki, the show. They don't care about Ant-Man, the movie, or all these other Marvel movies. Uh, well,
So let's unpack just a little bit here because the writer for this terrible movie, if you guys don't know who he is a guy named Jeff Loveness, who I'm pretty sure no one has ever heard of because he hasn't actually written a movie in his entire life. This is a guy whose his body of work is writing for the Jimmy Kimmel Show, yes, the late night show. He has written from the Primetime Emmy Awards. And so he has that on his record. He's also written maybe about 4 or 5 episodes of Rick and Morty. So based off of that platform, they decided, yeah, let's give you an MCU film that you can write all by yourself based on that great resume that you have here. And this is how you got Ant-Man 3. So the setup to this film is that, like I said, this is supposed to be years after Endgame. So Ant-Man is a hero because he was on the team that saved the entire world and brought half the universe back to life. But now he's being basically berated by everyone who he knows because he isn't doing enough. He's just going on talk shows and talking about his book. He's not making any real change in the world. It's like This is the guy who literally brought back half the fucking universe, and you guys have the audacity to say that he's not doing enough for society.
There's still homeless people. You know, they're still suffering in San Francisco, and he's responsible for it.
So his daughter, who, keep in mind, has been recast 4 times in the course of the entire MCU. This is the 4th actress to play the character of Cassie. Matter of fact, every movie that this character has been featured in, a different actress has played it. So this is the 4th actress. Now the girl from what was it, Freaky? The Freaky Friday reboot.
Catherine Newton.
Yeah, with what's his name? Vince Vaughn from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So she's basically a social justice warrior in San Francisco who goes to peaceful protest, quote unquote, and gets arrested because she basically shrunk a cop car, and that's what she got arrested for. Yeah. By the way, I'm not making any of this up. All this stuff actually happens. This is
that is true. Were they fiery but mostly peaceful protests?
Okay, but you just stop right there. I haven't seen this movie, and from what you're saying, I'm not going to. But like, this is like the worst thing you could come up with. Like, hey, let's try to make a terrible idea. This is exactly what you would pitch, and I can't believe it's what the movie is.
Yeah.
This is the kickoff for Phase 5.
And by the way, we'll get to this to the end of this one, but yeah, apparently he's also going to be writing the new Avengers movie too. So
why? This is what I don't understand. Just you telling me that he wrote for Jimmy Kimmel and the Primetime Emmys. Those are basically variety shows. Why are you going to hand a major franchise not starter, but a kickoff to another season of the world's longest and most expensive soap opera? Why are you handing it to a variety writer who's not written anything even close to drama or scripted comedy?
Because we spent $300 million on blue screen. We can't afford quality writers. Because the MCU is literally a template that doesn't matter who's directing the movie. It doesn't matter who wrote the movie. It's a fucking template that Disney just, basically just throw it in the fucking template machine and it'll spit something out.
Yes, but it doesn't bother to establish anything in terms of world or,
right.
I'm just absolutely astonished. I did not know that this was written by someone who just was it's like getting someone who wrote for like Laugh-In to write like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It's an insane idea.
Yeah.
Why? Why are they even trying? I'm just astonished. I'm really speechless. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so then we get to the point where, like I said, they're all in a room together. It finds out that Hank and Cassie, and I think they implied Janet was a part of this project too. They were working on some kind of beacon to the quantum realm, and then Janet freaks out all of a sudden because they realize, oh no, you guys are trying to contact the quantum realm. Don't do that because this guy that I knew for 30 years and didn't tell anybody about is down there, and he's bad. And they all get sucked up into the quantum realm, and that's pretty much your start of the film. What were you gonna say, Rick?
No, I'm not sure that Janet knew. I think her daughter knew. I can't remember. Evangeline Lilly. I think she knew. Hank knew. Obviously, the daughter knew. Scott didn't know. I don't think Scott knew.
No, he didn't know at all.
Yeah, so I don't think Janet did because she. The first thing is like, you connected to the quantum realm. Turn it off now. And of course, we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so that's another little point I want to put out here. There's way too many characters in this film, and if you're going to have that many characters in this film, you should probably get rid of them throughout the course of the movie, especially when you're introducing a big bad villain in the course of this movie too. This is like the perfect opportunity to just get rid of people who you do not need, but they don't do that here in this film. So we find out that Janet had spent 30 years in the quantum realm with Kang. This is the conflict of the film. Kang is banished to the quantum realm by other multiverse versions of Kang. So keep in mind, there's millions of different versions of Kang throughout the course of this whole universe. He gets shipped to the quantum realm. His ship that he controls with his mind is busted. So there's like this big spear thing that him and Janet have to fix in order for him to get back to his multiverse. So she fixes it. And then she sees that, he's Kang the Conqueror, that he's destroyed multiverses, entire universes and whatnot. So he says, just let me go and I won't destroy your universe. And she's like, no, because you're a monster. So she takes the little spear thing and smashes it and blows it up. and now Kang is stuck in the multiverse, in the quantum realm where he can't escape. So of course she's been gone for 30 years. Now she's back, and Kang, because he is this super smart conqueror person, has created an entire empire down here in the quantum realm. He's created like armies and ships and like layers and prisons and all this stuff, but somehow he can't fix this little circle thing to go back to his own timeline. That's the one thing he can't do with all his smarts and brilliance. And this is what the film is. Scott is dragged into this. Now it's like, help me fix my circle cube thing, and then I'll let you guys live, or some nonsense like that. And then there's a bunch of filler characters that mean nothing. Bill Murray's in the movie for like 5 minutes, only to be established that he slept with Michelle Pfeiffer at some point of her 30 years during this whole universe. And that means absolutely nothing later on. I don't know if that scene got cut. You have a bunch of little freedom fighters and side characters that are in the movie. They don't really play much of a role. And then you get to the ending of this film, which is essentially the freedom fighters and Ant-Man and a giant army of ants fighting Kang the Conqueror, who's supposed to be your big bad villain for the next 5 years. So Rick, did I miss anything in that whole spiel about where this movie went?
I'm trying to think what you might have missed. No, I think you pretty much got most everything. Although, um, I think you pretty much got. I mean, yeah, I think you got everything. The only thing I would add is that these minor characters, these freedom fighters, they just seem to come from the gay rocks school. You know, whatever the gay rock character was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, oh, let's go ahead, let's kill him now with that look. And then well, you forgot to mention Mordock, Maddock, Malak, Madak,
Oh yeah, Mordock. So
whatever that thing
so it
was.
turns out that Mordock is the first villain from the first Ant-Man movie. Whoever played the I don't know what name it is. Who cares? He's back. And then the CGI on his whole body is so bad. It's like when he's wearing like the little mask and whatnot, like it actually kind of looks good when he's not like showing like his human face. Then you take it off and it looks like something from like Spy Kids, from like Spy Kids 2. Like that's what, like, remember, was it the George Lopez?
Yeah.
And that whole warped face thing. Like that's how bad it looks. This is a $300 million production movie, and it just looks absolutely awful.
That's a problem. You have him as, I guess, a secondary villain or the henchman. You can't take that kind of villain seriously when he looks so comically bad.
Yeah.
And
And
everyone
to be
makes fun
fair
of him.
though, they never take him seriously. He's in the
No.
movie supposed to be this menacing character. Nobody takes him seriously at all. Even when he's explaining what's happened to him in the course of like the last 8 years, they're literally laughing at him as he's explaining this.
Yes, and the thing is, because it's this is maybe the screenwriter's variety background. When he's masked and he has a very particular, deep resonant voice, and it sounds very menacing. Once he's unmasked, he sounds funny, he looks funny. So it's a bit like in the Wizard of Oz, where you see the all powerful Oz as this little man. You're not going to take him seriously, and everyone makes fun of him. And so you can't have a villain or a
Mhm.
henchman that is so comical, because already you're telling the audience, you know what? Don't bother thinking of this person as a menace. And it's almost cartoonish, and it looks cartoonish. The
It's
CGI
like
is really
it's
kind of
like they decided we have to undercut this character because the real threat is Kang. Everyone needs to be focused on Kang. Everyone needs to be hyped about Kang. And look, here's the thing. I said this a few weeks before this movie even came out with Jonathan Majors, because Hollywood is clearly like, he's clearly the new it guy in Hollywood. They've been doing this like the last few months now. But I don't know. Every time I see him, I just feel like I'm watching like a theater actor. You know what I mean? Like someone who probably should be better suited for Broadway than the big screen. And when he's in this film, when he's playing the more subdued, more serious version of Kang, he actually does pretty well. But when you force him to actually have to show any kind of like emotion, whether it's anger or being upset, he just comes off as way too cartoonish for me to take seriously. And that's the big disconnect here with Jonathan Majors. And we'll talk about, I'll save that point for tomorrow, because we'll talk about kind of his overarching push to push him as like the next big thing. But Rick, what did you think about Majors as Kang the Conqueror in this film?
I wasn't overwhelmed with him, and I'm thinking, maybe in the future film he will be menacing. That whole that whole multi thing where he's dressed up like an Egyptian pharaoh and he looks like a mad monk or all those others, I'm thinking this is dumb. This is just flat out dumb. I'm not sure I'd seen anything. I think the only other Marvel movie where I thought the mid credit scene was maybe dumber was when your generation's Gene Kelly popped up at the in Eternals, and I swear at that point I was with my friends and I thought, did I just see Harry Styles? I literally thought I was hallucinating. And here again, I don't get all of the praise for him. But you're right, he's fine when he's trying to be more dramatic and more serious. But when he's trying to lead his army and lead Mordok, Madok, Manak, whatever it's called, into battle against against the kingdom of the ants and all the freedom fighters, you just think, all right, just ham it up for all it's worth. You're getting paid millions of dollars. Just go full throttle on this.
Yeah.
Go full throttle on the cray
You know what? Do you know what this reminds me of? Is listening to this movie description is like these comic book movies have ended up where they began. Okay, there's a little movie called Flash Gordon, and I'm not sure when it came out, if it was the 70s or when it was,
I
but
think maybe 80.
okay. This is how ridiculous these and campy and like, oh, and it's like they're $300 million budgets and this is the best that they can produce. It's the fans should literally be angry. It's a slap in the face to like what they're capable of potentially to this is what they produce. It's just a giant embarrassment.
Flash Gordon at least was knowingly camp. I mean,
Right.
that's where it was geared for. This was meant to be more. Well, I can't say more serious because there was a lot of odd humor that they were trying to inject, and so that there's again disconnect. But again, if you want to talk about why it's cartoonish, go to the screenwriter. This is a guy who's built his career on trying to have funny moments on Jimmy Kimmel, and I guess trying to come up with with what people would consider witty banter at the Emmy Awards for between the presenters. So that's what he would go back to, and it's not a good fit when you're trying to put something as part of a continuing series. And moreover, to be perfectly blunt, I had no memory of who the villain was in the first Ant-Man. I am not so well versed in the MCU where I can remember any of the things that happened before. I had this issue with the last Spider-Man movie, or the one with Jake Gyllenhaal. I had no idea who any of these people were. How am I supposed to remember this? That's why I keep telling people when they release another Marvel movie, they really should say previously on the Avengers so that I could at least try to catch up. That's why it's the world's longest and most expensive soap opera, because you have to keep remembering things that happened 5 movies ago or 7 years
15
ago.
years ago when this whole thing
Yes.
started.
How? I mean, why? I mean, for people who are not versed in comics like myself,
And
we aren't going to remember any of this.
couple of things. So someone pointed this out yesterday. This wasn't even a sequel to the last Ant-Man movie. This is a sequel to Loki, which was a Disney Plus show that because they introduced Kang's character in Loki, and even like there's like a post-credit scene that's supposed to be a preview to Loki season 2. So they expect you to now watch not only just the 31 movies, but like the 8 or 9 like Disney Plus shows that are also associated with this universe as well, in order to understand what the hell is going on with any of this.
This is a wild miscalculation. I'm not going to watch a Loki or
Well,
Miss
keep in mind,
Marvel or any of this. I shouldn't be required. I shouldn't be required to watch all of these.
Doctor Strange, the last one that came out last year, was also a sequel to WandaVision. So they expect you to watch WandaVision before you can figure out why the hell Scarlet Witch is all of a sudden the villain in this movie to begin with. So yeah, they expect you to watch all this little crap. It's like, oh, it's all interconnected, guys. It's like, no. And then as Rob mentioned earlier, it's like these movies are the most expensive movies produced in Hollywood right now, with the exception of Avatar, because at least Avatar is actually making use of the technology it has to justify the amount of money put into it. This isn't doing any of that at all. They're just paying, okay, put Michelle Pfeiffer and Paul Rudd on a blue screen, and we'll just do the entire movie in post. 90% of the movie be in post-production. And it's going to cost us $300 million.
And those were ghastly visuals where you could sometimes I mean, when they're running as Kang is attacking that village
Yeah,
where they're taken, and like what is like, don't drink the, oh, you drink out of the front, I mean, or whatever, that drink that
that
whatever
goo. Yeah.
out of the other character's body, so that he could understand the language.
Everyone has to drink this red goo that looks like blood in order to understand what all these alien creatures in the quantum realm are actually saying. And then you figure out it's just one big joke, like they're all a bunch of comedy characters, like lower tier and shit. Like, think about this too. It's like, okay, well, I mentioned Avatar, right? With the amount of money that they spend to make that movie look like that does. Imagine how much money the MCU would have to spend in order to make one of their movies look like what Avatar looks like, with the budget
Oh,
that they already have producing the crap that they're doing.
look, there were times when they were attacking that village. I literally could see that it was just Paul Rudd and the actress playing his daughter
Yeah,
running. I mean, I could tell. I mean, it was. I mean, obviously, you're trying to pass it off as this other world, but it looked like they were just sticking out far too much for me to be convinced that it was a real
yeah.
world. It's sad, and really, when they're at the bar waiting for Bill Murray, I was expecting the Cantina theme from Star Wars to start playing. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
it
it's
looked like a scene either out of Star Wars, or like it felt like they were taking a vibe out of like Guardians of the Galaxy too, with this whole thing.
or that the casino in one of those later Star Wars movies. I mean,
Oh,
again,
you mean Space Monaco, as I like to refer
yeah,
to it
Space
as?
Monaco, yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, it's nice. I guess it's nice to see Bill Murray there, but what was the point? He could have been cut. This whole
No,
character could have
he
been cut.
literally could have been cut out of this movie entirely, and it would have made a single difference because he never comes back after that one scene. Like he never comes back to the film at
Well,
all.
it's because that little some kind of monster thing appears to not quite swallow him, but just kind of tangle him up. The whole scene was pointless. I mean, you could have just done that, like even with voiceover, which I hate. You could have given all that information. There was no point to that whole scene, and it just seemed to go on. And really, I understand the desperation that Janet had, in having her desires fed. But maybe this is just me, but I would rather have gone off with Kang than gone off with Bill Murray if I need to have those desires filled. That's just me.
I mean,
I mean, listen, I haven't watched one Disney Plus show. I'm sure as hell not going to start.
there's
now.
8 of them now.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch one to follow up what's happening in a movie. That's the kind of shit, by the way, that like I've talked about on a bunch of these podcasts where I've said a lot of like the MCU is based on like nerd culture in
Yeah.
terms of information and being able to compile all this information over 20, 30 different volumes. And it's like, look, that does not work in a cinematic format because it has a beginning, a middle, and end. It's not supposed to keep going on and on and on. Now, TV, that's something else entirely. That really, as a format,
But that's
really
what we're doing now. We're doing
Right.
a cinematic version of a television show.
Yeah.
This is why I call the MCU the world's longest and most expensive soap opera, because you do need to try to keep up with everything. It was bad enough when you just had the movies and you were expected to remember all these details from movies that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now you have to include the TV shows, which I have not watched. The only reason I knew about I could follow Doctor Strange is because I was surrounded by people who watched WandaVision, and so they could fill me in when I would hear them talk. But same with Loki. But I'm not going to watch. I mean, I'm assuming that the Marvelettes, I'm sorry, the Marvels. Sorry, I apologize for calling them Marvelettes.
A film that has already been pushed back to November, by the way. It was supposed to come out this summer, and now they're pushing it to November.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to overthrow Dune Part 2 in the box office, because it's being released a week after it.
Matter of fact, it's being sandwiched between Dune 2 and the Hunger Games prequel. So that pretty much tells you that they're giving up on it entirely.
Yikes.
But yes, I mean, that movie's going to have a character who was just on the show. I mean, just basically, I mean, that was Ms. Marvel. That was her character. There was a whole TV show about her, and people are going to watch. They better find a way to introduce her to the people who've not seen the show, and I assume that there are many. Otherwise, people are going to watch this movie and say, "Who is this Kamala Khan character? Why? I mean, what is she doing?" I mean, they're not going to understand. They're going to be lost. But again, look. I'm not invested in the MCU. I was never invested in the MCU to where I need to keep up with all these characters. And again, that's why I keep saying we need to have these little recaps. Like previously, you had that in soap operas and in TV shows, like previously on, Peyton Place or this and the other. So you could try to remember. They could fill you in. If they're going to make the Marvel
It's like
movies
though, if you
a
watch
TV
The
show,
Walking
just
Dead.
put it.
If you watch The Walking Dead, they always go previously on The Walking Dead, and they show you like the little relevant scenes that you have to remember in order to figure out what the hell's going on. So yeah, just do that.
Hell,
Exactly.
they had it on the animated versions of the comic book shows back in the day. If they had a 2-part episode on X-Men or Spider-Man or Batman. So, I mean, Jesus, the animated versions back in the day had a fucking recap.
Yeah, this Quantumania, really, it's been what, 2 weeks, and I barely remember anything in it other than poor Janet just being sucked into a world that she
By the
escaped.
way, stop with this Janet simping here. She's a terrible character. That's the entire film. So the whole point of this film is that she was in the quantum realm for 30 years, didn't tell anyone what happened, who she knew, or whatever the case. So she's freaking out for like the entire movie about this character who nobody knows because she hasn't told anyone shit. And then every time somebody keeps asking her, what's going on? What's going on? It's like, don't worry about it. I'll tell you later. And this goes on for like the first like hour and 30 minutes of the film. So then we finally get to see Kang. And it's like, what would have been great that would have prepared us for this? If you had actually told us somewhere in the last like 10 years that this guy who couldn't essentially destroy the entire multiverse was down here and you knew him personally, that may have been some good information to tell, I don't know, an Avenger. Right?
But how are you not embarrassed to have a character that's basically a plot device that you're just basically carrying along until you can reveal that information? See, it's like this. That's what's so embarrassing is that modern movie making, a major studio would release something that is so badly constructed and they don't care. They're like, oh, they'll buy it. They'll totally swallow this one whole. And it's like, who's in charge? It feels like a bunch of children are in charge over there.
Rob, you do have to remember that they had to have reshoots for this. After the movie was pretty much set, they had to go back, and I guess to add humor. I'm not sure why.
Well, yeah, Dofet puts it here. They did it for 2 reasons. One, because it wasn't MCU funny enough, so they had to add a lot of scenes to it. You can tell the scenes that are reshot, like that whole Cassie thing with her and Murdoch talking about, it's never too late to be a dick. You know that whole thing was put in for the reshoots. And then they changed the ending too, because the ending was supposed to be Scott and Hope are trapped in the quantum realm, and now they don't know like how to get out. So they got to like figure something out, right? And then all of a sudden, nope, Cassie turns the switch back on, and we can get out now. So there goes all the stakes that we had for that whole scene. It's just completely done. And then the post-credit scene that all of you simps still sit through like 18 minutes of like credits to watch. So we get the 3 versions of Kang that are in the multiverse now. You have like the Immortus, the one, you had the one that looks like an alien, and then the one that looks like a futuristic robot. And they're getting ready to take over the world, and they're calling in literally every Kang from the multiverse. So they're in a stadium where it's just like thousands of Kangs are just popping up everywhere. And then there's even Kangs that are in the crowd that are like screaming like schoolgirls, like fangirls, because, oh my God, that Kang showed up. This is going to be great. So this is your setup for the Avengers movie, written by this same schmuck who wrote Ant-Man 3 coming out in a few years. And the cell is supposed to be, oh my God, well that one Kang that got beaten by a ton of ants. So I mean, that was a strong Kang, but these Kangs are going to be even worse. I tell you, it's like fuck off.
Oh, the ants that discovered the joys of socialism, that's the one you're talking about?
That's the other thing. There's so much left wing BS thrown into this film. And it's like people will point this out. It's like, how is an army of ants an army of futuristic robotic ants, an example of socialism. Like, how do you even make that connection, like, at all? It's like what are we doing here, people? Like,
they're mindless workers who will do as they're told for low pay.
Right. I mean, other than like the basic sort of collectivist sort of like, we're all marching towards the same goal, horseshit. I don't know.
But it's like
like seriously, you keep telling everyone that, hey, this guy's the new Thanos, and the new Thanos gets beaten by a ton of ants. Really?
It kind of reminds me of a Joan Collins documentary where she talked about one of her worst films was, I think, called Kingdom of the Ants, where I think she got eaten by one of the ants in the way. She was glad that her role was over. This is pretty much the same thing. And
1.5 out of 5. That's my rating for this movie.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I think maybe a 1 for me. Though yeah, this is pretty bad, and we're gonna have what, at least one more Marvel movie after this. I don't know. I mean,
so the next big MCU film coming out is Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is the end of that saga because it's James Gunn's last movie. I'm not looking forward to that. I said this last week too. I think there are way too many people out there that have way too much faith in James Gunn at this point. If you guys are hoping that this film's going to be the big smash hit that everyone is expecting it to be, I think you got way too much hope in that guy. And then Captain Marvel 2, which is called The Marvels, was supposed to come out this summer, but they pushed that movie back. And in the course of pushing that movie back, they eliminated like 5 Disney Plus series off of this release that were supposed to come out this year. It was Echo, which is the one-legged lesbian Native American chick. That show's been pushed back. Ironheart, which is going to be LGBTQ to the max, that's been pushed back. Marvel What's If has been pushed back. Agatha Harkness has also been pushed back as well. So I don't know if they're going to just like hold those off till 2024, if they'll just scrap them all together at this point, because Disney's bleeding a lot of money and they don't have the money to put into promoting this crap anymore. But yeah, that's your sequence of the MCU.
They're not Disney's not understanding. They're literally glutting the market with so much product that people are not going to, they can't consume all of this product. Only real hardcore fanatics, not fans, fanatics are going to even bother trying, and they're not. And most of us, like me, who's never seen a Marvel show, who's never been interested in it, we're not going to be so much lost as bored. I was bored in this movie. I nodded off twice. It's really bad.
Well, not only that, but it's like you see here, all the projects they have coming out in the next couple of years, and people have already slowly starting to give up on this whole MCU thing. Like all the movies that came out last year did worse than the one before. This one's doing even worse than those movies a year ago. And you're saving grace. Hey, maybe they'll go see the Marvels this November, or maybe they'll go see Thunderbolts next year. It's like no one cares anymore. The only one on this entire list that anyone has any care for at this point is Deadpool 3. Only because people have been clamoring for, I guess, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds in the movie since the X-Men in 2007. So that's really the only project that people are even remotely looking forward to. No one cares about Captain America, Black Captain America. No one cares about the Thunderbolts for Florence Pugh. No one cares about Female Blade. It's like all of these projects are going to flop. And if these are going to flop, then the Disney Plus series are going to do even worse.
Well, when you said Thunderbolts, I was slightly confused. I thought that was the British show with the puppets? But that's
that's completely different. That's completely different.
Yeah. See, that's how much I know. And why is it called the Marvels? Is it going to be called the Marvels?
Well, it was like I said, it was supposed to be Captain Marvel 2, but then Disney realized that nobody likes Brie Larson because she's insufferable. So they decided, okay, let's put the Black Captain Marvel and then the Muslim Captain Marvel in the movie and just call it the Marvels and hope that we can sell this movie on diversity.
I am sorry. I also did think that it was called the Marvelettes. I'm not joking. I thought it was, and I thought it was going to be a biopic on the girl group. I am so sorry. I'm not joking. I apologize.
Yeah. I think, by the way, that's the character name. The pronunciation was Marvel, like Miss Marvel. But I have no fucking idea. So there you go. There's 3 of them, and they're gonna make a movie that's gonna The three of them will combine to make a movie that's not even going to pass like a mediocre, level. So I don't know. It's going to be pathetic, like most of Disney's slate as of late.
We don't know. It could be another turning point in cinematic history, like all the other Marvel movies
It
have
won't
been.
be.
I mean, I got pilloried for suggesting that maybe Marvel MCU was the apex of all human creativity. So just pointing that out there. Just pointing that out.
All right, then. So that's out of the way. So let's move on to this other shitty movie, Cocaine Bear. Who watched this movie? So everyone saw this one.
I actually saw it a few hours ago because again, there was no power at the library, so they said we could go home early if we wanted to, and I took that opportunity and I said, "Oh, let me sneak in the Cocaine Bear."
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Everyone on the internet has been marking out about this Cocaine Bear, right? Because you saw the original trailer for the film, and it's very simplistic in its idea. It's basically a bear on cocaine killing people, right? So people are like, "Oh, that's going to be a movie. Yeah, I'll go watch it." And then they found out who was directing the movie, and then it was like, "Oh God, this is not going to be that good of a movie now, is it?" And it's like, no, it's not. Now, I will be fair to Miss Elizabeth Banks. This is the best film that she's directed to date. That's not saying much because the only two movies she's directed before this was Pitch Perfect 2 and then Charlie's Angels from a few years ago. So by default, this is her best movie so far, but it's not really that good of a movie. Now, I'm going to ask you guys this because this is not a long movie. It's actually about an
95.
hour, 35 minutes, Mitt.
Yeah.
This movie dragged on forever. It just felt like this felt longer to me than some of the 3-hour movies that we were watching a few months ago. Like this went on forever. And I think the big problem here is that look, if you're smart, you know what people are here for. People just want to see a giant coked out bear rip people to shreds. That's the entire reason anyone's in this theater. And you have like 30 characters that you try to give backstories to, and there's this whole you try to focus more on the characters than the bear, and then you're just sitting here like, dude, I don't care about Ice Cube's kid walking around with Han Solo trying to find bags of cocaine, and he's depressed because his wife died and his dog. I don't care about any of this. Just get to the slaughtering part. That's all we care about. This should be focus on one or two characters that are essential characters, and everyone else should essentially be cannon fodder to get absolutely murdered. It should be like Friday the 13th with a bear, right? But they can't get the simple things right. Rob, what's your stakes on the entire setup of Cocaine Bear?
Yeah, I mean, the premise is enough to sort of like get you into the theater to just sort of say, "Oh, hey, I'm sure this will be like a fun spectacle, seeing people get killed, like whatever." I'm sure it'll be a good time at the movie theater. There really isn't anything past the premise though. And I was kind of amazed just how poorly executed it was because like, yeah, there are like these vicious kills, but like there's nothing behind them. Like you don't care about the characters, and you're given like some semblance of a backstory, but not enough to have like to get a good feeling of who these characters are, why you should care about them, or that there's any stakes to this movie. And then and then you have them saying this dumb shit that are said just for laughs. Like people wouldn't say half of the shit that's said in this movie, except for the fact that like it has this comedic tone to it. And so because of that, none of the deaths feel like they matter or even entertaining. And so it's like it's this weird middle ground of like, okay, we're filling time with all these people and and they're walking around the wilderness, they're trying to locate the cocaine, there's criminals, there's a family involved, and it's like you just feel like you're wasting time, and it's not entertaining, it's not fun. It's just really, really stupid. And on top of it, the fucking bear is so embarrassingly CGI. Like, it's so badly done that's like, oh, they went full retard here. They went fully to the stupidest level they could, and it's not even entertaining. To me, that's pretty hard to do.
Well, to be fair, the bear still looks better than Murdoch did in Ant-Man 3, and that was a movie that cost $300 million. So give him a little bit of credit there. Okay. Rick, do you kind of agree with those sentiments about the setup for Cocaine Bear?
Yes, I think when people go to see this, and I went with those expectations. I expected to be kind of slightly tongue in cheek, campy, but not trying to be too idiotic, like aware of its premise. This didn't do that because it was trying to give us these dramatic moments. That whole element with Alden Ehrenreich and his child that he never sees, and poor Ray Liotta. This is the last thing we're going to remember him. We're literally going to remember having his esophagus ripped out as he's hanging by a duffel bag. That's going to be our last image of an actor who really was much better than the parts that he was given. Uh, there was I wasn't laughing. Okay, I laughed maybe once when for some reason I just can't get enough is playing during the the ambulance the ambulance scene. But
Oh.
it's like they never really decided if they were going to embrace the camp or try to be somewhat more serious. Elements were introduced that never really went anywhere. I mean, that kind of really strange criminal gang that menaces his Ice Cube or Ice Cube Jr. there. What was the point of that? How did the cop go from the visitor center without noticing any of the chaos there to the gazebo? How did he? I mean, how did he really get to the top of that gazebo? I mean, there were so many questions that I kept asking. I mean, none of this made sense. And look, don't even bother with Ice Cube Jr.'s fingers because they wouldn't survive. I mean, they would probably have just rotted away within
They're
hours.
definitely getting infected. Like let's
Yeah,
be very
yeah.
real there.
And it just there was nothing there. I mean, the only thing that I actually found, and this is going to be strange, the only thing I found amusing was the very beginning, where I'm going, oh, that looks like Matthew Reese, who's Kerry Russell's partner. I don't think they've gotten married, and they were on The Americans, and so was Margot Martindale. I'm going, wow, they were. Is this like a kind of Americans reunion? It would have been funny if they had adopted Russian accents during the production instead of these Kerry Russell's very bizarre, sometimes Southern, sometimes not Southern accent. It's like, was she trying to decide if she was from Georgia or was she trying to decide if she was like from New York? I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yeah.
was
Felicity can't act very well. So
Felicity's loved by a certain generation. Not me. I never saw the show, but yeah, I never felt that they could decide whether they were going to go all in on the camp or try to be serious. And when you spend more of the time wondering who these people are, not just the characters but the actors, you're wasting time.
Yeah.
One thing that what was that shot when the other guy, the one that survived, the one that's in this, was it gang, this criminal gang made up of like these, um, like I don't know what they look like. I don't want to. I don't know. They looked very weak to be in a criminal gang that would terrify
Oh, you
people.
mean the three little just shit bags,
Yes,
teenagers, kids? Yeah,
yes,
the ones
yes.
who are apparently going around robbing people in the park. It was like, yeah,
Yeah, I'm going. There was a quick shot of the survivor talking about his dreams, and you get to see the other two guys, the one that had his head cut off and the one that had his head blown off, as they were at the end of their lives. But it didn't make any sense to me. How would he know what they look like? Because they weren't alive. I mean, he didn't see them, as far as I know. He didn't see each of them die. Well, no, he saw the first one with his head blown off, which I thought was surprisingly graphic for something that I thought was going to be more camp. And I felt embarrassed for people. I love Margot Martindale. I think
mhm.
she's wonderful. I think that Kerry Russell and Matthew Reese are great in The Americans. It's a show that I was really addicted to. But they were just I just felt, well, I mean, at least we're getting Solo to make a comeback now, so I guess that's a positive. But there was no, there was no point to any of this. I felt bad because, again, and I go by not just what I see, but what the audience was saying. When I left the theater, people were saying, "Oh, this isn't what I was expecting." They weren't. They really like it. But one big
people.
surprise was when someone said, they said at the end of the movie, in loving memory of Ray Liotta, someone in the audience actually said, he died?
Well, what about the kids doing coke? Like the two kids
Oh,
who find coke in the early and are
they take it.
snorting it,
No,
or
they're
the
not
little
snorting it.
kid.
They're put. They're trying to
Right,
take it to the mouth.
right. As me and my roommate were talking, it's like you can still get high that way. But yeah, it's just no comment. I've literally have never done cocaine in my life, so literally, I it's just weird. Like why? But but seriously, like, and then the little kid like swearing at the end, like saying like he's fucking had enough. And it's just like this is the kind of thing that we're like, oh, isn't this cute, guys? Isn't it cute that kids are doing coke and swearing and you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
it's not like there was a well set up sense of chases. It was just kind of like gruesome violence, like the fucking bear trying to climb the tree, just it just kind of dumb,
That that
stupid
that
shit in there.
that whole sec would kind of bother me too, or just annoyed me. How like the scene where like the two kids are like sitting in the woods, like blowing cocaine on each other. It's like, is this what we're doing now? This fucking like 2007 Seth Rogen level of comedy is like, oh, the kids are doing drugs. Isn't this funny? It's like, no, where's the fucking bear? Like, what are we doing here? Like
Well,
that was the point where I was like, okay, this movie already lost the plot. It's not going to get it back.
Well, what's interesting is that the movie really starts off with these kind of whether it's Scandinavian or European hikers.
The couple,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the bear's already coked up, or it
Mhm.
looks like that. I heard someone laughing quite loudly when the bear was banging his head against or her head against a tree. I thought it was odd that they found that funny, but there was a strange moment there because I couldn't remember if the guy's name was Olaf or something like that because I think they used two names for this character, and I'm going, this sounds very strange. But already there, you introduce these characters, and she gets mauled, and all I kept thinking, really, for some reason, I kept flashing back to Grizzly Man, the Werner
Mhm.
Herzog documentary.
Yeah.
But then, not near the end of the movie, but much later on, you get to see Olaf again, and he's crying, and then they leave him, and then that's it. We never hear from him again. It doesn't make any sense. I didn't understand the whole issue about the cop with his little dog. Uh, what was the point of that? They had two kind of not quite post credit ends, but they had two scenes after the
I
start of
left as
the.
soon as the credits started rolling. I didn't see any of that
No,
shit.
yeah, there were two. The one is where they I think they bring the guy the survivor of this vicious teen gang
Hmm.
gets he's going to be hitchhiking to New York City, and then he gets this duffel bag which I assume has cocaine. He throws it into the back of the truck with goats, and then he tells them to stop, and he pulls it out, I guess assuming that the goats are going to get high again or get high. And then the second one is where they bring the dog. Alden Ehrenreich reunites with his child, and then the dog starts munching on something, and we realize that it's Ice Cube Junior's fingers. Yes, yes. This is the stuff. This is the stuff of legend, sir. Stop.
Look, the whole setup of this film is car crash TV. Like I said, you put a bear on cocaine. Clearly, it sold itself on the premise on the name alone because that's what anyone talked about. So it's like just give people what they want. All they want is carnage. All they want is I look back at a film, Terrifier 2, right? The one that came out a few years ago on the micro budget, especially compared to this film. And it's like all of that film was like, hey, people are here because we're gonna do horrifically gory content for a micro budget. We're going to try to gross people out what beyond our capabilities, and that should have been everything that this film was. It's like that's all people wanted to see, and you introducing all these human characters and these storylines that no one cares about. It's like this is why a lot of like the Godzilla movies like just simply don't work because they think that the draw is the human characters and not Godzilla destroying buildings and fighting other giant monsters. Like that's what people want to see. Just give them that. Stop with this whole we need drama and intrigue and storyline. You're not good at it. Stop trying to do it.
Yeah, they introduce little bits, and they never go anywhere. Like the one with the ranger and the guy that comes in bringing the big Smokey the Bear thing, which I thought
Yeah.
was really over the top performance. Are you suggesting that they're lovers? That's what's the idea that I got which didn't quite seem to make any sense because we don't know who these people are. I don't even know if they have names. As far as I know, she was just Ranger, and he was just this guy that
Yeah,
she
the
knew.
gay guy from American Family or Modern Family, which I'm
Yeah,
glad
Modern
he
Family.
died. It's like, why is he even in this movie?
Yeah, and I kind of felt, well, I hated to see the way that the Ranger's death. I thought that was a little too gruesome, and I was waiting for the ambulance to
No,
crash.
that wasn't gruesome enough. It's like they should have showed the bear like ripping him apart, like ripping him to shreds. That's what anyone's here for. It's
Oh,
like,
no, 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 no. The Ranger, when she falls off the ambulance,
oh yeah, yeah,
is like,
You
like
know what it feels
that.
like though is that you have a bunch of ingredients that could make a good movie, could make something entertaining, and it never comes together. Like there's no reason for us to care about these characters. There's no like even you could say the deaths are well filmed. They're not. Like it just feels like, half thought half thought out scenes being executed that just are like, oh hey, look, someone's dying. Hey, look, people are running. Hey, look at the bear doing something funny. It's idiotic, terrible kind of banter material
yeah.
that is thrown on screen, and it's like Elizabeth Banks is exactly the kind of person who would be behind something like this. To be fair, I have not seen Pitch Perfect, any of the movies. And I
Same here.
haven't seen the Charlie's Angels movie she did, so I
Yeah.
can't say whether it's the best one because I haven't seen her other work. But this is not a good movie on any level. I tried to find something that I enjoyed about it.
Yeah. Well, you get little bits here and there, like
Yeah,
a little story. You get the story of Ray Liotta and his son and grandson. Then you get a little story of the park ranger and the guy she's with. Then you get a little story of this criminal gang that apparently is harassing all of these people. And yes, these very skinny kids should go after Ice Cube Jr. Yes, yes, I can see how they are going to intimidate him. And so you get these little bits, but they never come together. It would have been much better if they had focused on one story. And yes, you could have these other characters pop in and get gruesomely killed. I guess that's part of the appeal. But there's no sense for any of these characters to be in this. And for me, again, as I'm watching Ray Liotta's last scene, I thought this is not how I want to remember him. I do not want to remember him, getting this kind of treatment, even if it's fake. It's sad for me that this is going to be the last image that people
Well,
have of him.
I do believe he has one more movie that's coming out, so this won't be his last film.
I
But
hope.
there was two other films that he was doing right before he died, which they're still trying to figure out if they're gonna keep him in those movies or they'll just recast him entirely. But I do think he has one more movie that's already in the can before this one comes out. So yeah.
I hope, but yes, I mean, you go into this movie expecting it to be kind of goofy, fun, kind of an '80s throwback. That's what I was hoping for, like a cheesy '80s movie where you get a crazed bear going after people, and these villains trying to go after their drugs, and the mom trying to searching to rescue her daughter. Okay, that's already enough. For especially a 95-minute movie, you don't need all these other elements that just seem to pop out of nowhere. They're not important. You don't care about these people. You don't even really remember their names, and it just kind of just it did feel like it was dragging. I was like, oh, when is this going to end? It's like this is a very it felt like a long film, even though it's a very short film.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a big problem for me. So I don't know. Final thoughts about this one. I don't know. I give this film like a 2 out of 5. It wasn't completely terrible, but it completely missed where it should have been. This could have been so much better than it actually was, and that in and of itself is a disappointment in my eyes. So yeah, a very low 2 out of 5 for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I give it a 1.5 out of 5. I mean I kind of summed it up a little bit ago, but just not a lot to enjoy here. The acting's terrible, the writing and directing is terrible. I suppose I laughed a couple times, here and there, but just I just felt like the movie didn't even pass an entertainment test. Where it's like
Mhm.
I'll watch crappy B movies, all kinds of like horror movies and exploitation movies. Like if it's entertaining and like violent and has some of those sort of cult movie qualities, I'm down. I just kind of felt like this is a big miss. But yeah, just 1.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I felt it was a wasted opportunity, a terrible disappointment. What could have been just kind of a fun, goofy, self-aware movie ended up just being a hodgepodge of things that were thrown in there, and you couldn't balance the gruesome nature of some of the kills with some of the which would could have been a more fun premise. I'm going to say a one. A one for me. It's for me. It was a disappointment and just a wasted opportunity to have something fun.
Yeah, it's just like I said. I mean, I wasn't too shocked when I heard who was directing this film, and then people were trying to give like Phil Lord and what's the other guy's
Christopher
name?
Miller.
Miller.
Yeah, Christopher Miller,
Yeah.
like credit for it. It's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, these guys were involved in it. It's just like, yeah, they didn't help that much, not as nearly as much as you guys think that it did. So, yeah, 2 out of 5 there. I mean, hey, this is barely better than Ant-Man 3, so consider that a win, I guess.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's like I wouldn't be able to decide which one I would rather watch. If you ask me, Ant-Man 3 or Cocaine Bear, I was like,
I
uh,
watched this one
uh,
only because it's shorter.
yeah, okay, all right. Okay, I see. I concede that. I concede that.
Yep. And then, of course, we're there to our final movie of the night. Don't think our buddy Rob watched this one, but I know you did, Mister Rick. We watched the Jesus Revolution, our first big Christian movie of the year. So it feels like there hasn't been too many of these since the pandemic. I feel like before the pandemic, we probably getting like at least 4 or 5 of these a year, but it just feels like maybe I either skip some or they just haven't been promoted as easily. But this is a film, obviously, about the Christian Revolution, I guess you can say, during the sexual revolution of like the 1960s, where everyone thought society was going downhill, and it was only going to tell. I say this every time, and it's just hilarious to me. If 1966 California could see what 2023 California would have become, there would have been another war. And this one they've actually would have supported. I'm just telling you right now. They can just see the absolute degeneracy that California has come into. They would have not put up with this stuff. But this is kind of a big budget Christian film. Lionsgate, which I do believe bought Pureflix a few years ago. Or took over that brand. So a lot of these projects now coming out of the Lionsgate property. And essentially what you have here is a story about, like I said, the real life story of Chuck Smith and his hippie co-pastor, Lonnie Frisbee, who led a movement to evangelize hippies and other people, a bunch of drugged out messes in the 1960s and whatnot. So the story here is that, Kelsey Grammer, who plays pastor in the film, he's kind of leading a struggling congregation of believers. No one's really showing up to his church. The big news is obviously the Vietnam War. You got a lot of hippie protesters. You have a lot of people who are just look dirty and unclean, and who the Christians don't really want to be around. Let's put it that way. And he decides, well, after some convincing from a guy who looks like a hippie version of Jesus, and talks to him, and it's like, yeah, these people out here, they're looking for something, and you're closing the door on them. It's like, help bring him in. And then that's essentially what happened. All of these hippie kids just to show up, start going to church one day, and the rest is history. Now, I will say this: one of the things, and I'm not sure if you followed this with me too, is that I think with a lot of these films that are looking for validation with kind of like say non-Christian audiences, I feel like the only way that they can get that validation, given the subject matter of the film, is that they have to essentially tone down any real scripture that's involved with Christianity. And this one to me felt like it was more towards that line, where you notice like all of the story here is about bringing these kids to Jesus, bringing these kids to Christ. But the second everyone holds up a Bible in the movie, but the second anyone starts saying, okay, now let's open up and let's read, it's like skip to the next scene. It's like, we don't actually want to say anything that's specifically in the Bible. We just want to hold it up and kind of use it as a marker. Did you feel that way watching this film? Maybe I'm being a little too cynical. What do you think, Rick?
I think you're being a little too cynical. comical. I can kind of understand why they did that. But I mean, they did have mentions of what is in scripture. But I think that they were more interested in what really seemed three stories. There was the Pastor Chuck story, there was the Lonnie Frisbee story, and it wasn't until the end that I realized it was a. I mean, I kind of figured it was a real person, but I just never thought anyone's last name would be Frisbee. For some reason, I thought that was hilarious. And then there was Greg Laurie, who is kind of the guy who is one of those who is found and finds faith. Now, yes, I was thinking about this. They did there was a Jesus movement. I mean, this is based on historic fact. I don't know how accurate it is. I'm sure they changed some things. What I found curious was that in a lot of these Christian films that are, I guess, targeted towards more mainstream audiences, they try to put in maybe a little suggestion of some kind of titillating aspects, but they don't really want to go into like full-fledged sin. You do have some drug use, but I mean, you don't really see a lot. I assume that there was some sort of, there was some sex involved here before Greg and his girlfriend found faith, but you don't get the hint. You got that same thing in American Underdog, when you saw Kurt Warner and his now
Brenda.
wife Brenda
Brenda.
Brenda when they were dating. In the book, in his biography, he is open about the fact that they slept together before. I mean, despite her being a woman of faith, they apparently did have premarital sex, which is a big no-no in a lot of Christian circles. But in the movie, you didn't see that. And the same thing here. I mean, you got to one drug moment, but it wasn't with them. It was with the girlfriend's sister. Was it Dolly, Dodo, whatever her name was?
Yeah.
But it's appreciative of I appreciate the fact that they did tackle something that is not well known. That not every hippie turned towards the East and the Mahesh Yogi or Transcendental Meditation or things like that. There were hippies that turned towards more charismatic Christian movement, not the mainline Protestant movement, but like more spirit filled that you would find, and you get, like, was it the Harvest? Not quite. This is not a Lakewood church. You won't see. I don't think you'll see Joel Osteen celebrating this.
No.
So, although I can say that my church did try to organize a group viewing, but somehow they didn't get it together. And interestingly enough, I saw this movie literally right after church. In fact, I was like trying to hope that the message would end sooner so that I could get to the theater in time.
Yeah, because that's the most important thing of your day is to watch the movie about God, not to actually hear the word of Christ and all that other stuff.
Hey, I was paying attention. So no blasphemy here.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that with, like I said, this film, because like you always know that with these type of movies, these are the ones that the critics tend to hate like the most, because they just hate anything that has to evolve throughout the world of God. And Jesus, we've seen this with many films throughout the course of the last few years. But I was thinking about, because the character of, I think it's like Ronnie is not the character here, the kind of like the hippie
Lonnie
Jesus.
Frisbee, the hippie Jesus.
Ronnie, as I said, Ronnie, but yeah, Lonnie, the character here, because what I was looking at here, and it actually would have been great if Johnson actually joined us here tonight, because I wanted to pick her brain about this as well. But it seemed like, and I'm glad that the film actually did acknowledge this, is that at one point it seemed like the character himself was kind of being, he was saying that, I'm being used as like a vessel from Jesus to help like convert people. And it's like, okay, are we kind of like going into like this self-hero worship, or is this like slowly becoming a cult, or is this a genuine movement, right? And it's kind of hard to decipher just from the parameters of what the story is setting up, because like I said, you really don't get any in depth until what what this church is actually teaching like these people, because it kind of like skirts over towards like the real like word of God. So it's like it's hard to tell by watching this movie. It's like, okay, are they truly really like learning about Christ, or is this kind of just like smoke and mirrors? Because there's obviously like a lot of people who claim that, oh yeah, I work for God and I believe in God, and the next thing you know, you're in a church with like drag queens and like rainbow flags all over the place, which kind of makes you think, I'm not sure if you and I are following the same God here. So I'm glad that they did at least mention or at least address some of those issues like in the film, so it didn't come off that it was just completely empty, which is what I was worried about. Rick, let me ask you this question. Kelsey Grammer is obviously kind of the drawing point for this film. What did you think of his dynamic with the character of Lonnie in the movie? Do you think that his portrayal was accurate to I guess what you would say kind of like a modern church? Because I feel like this is more of like like an origin story of a lot of places, kind of like modern contemporary churches with like the bands and kind of like the messaging, trying to reach to like the younger people.
I think so. I mean, a lot of the things that you would see starting once the hippies start coming in, you do see more now in a lot of churches. Some slightly larger churches. We have maybe a couple of mega churches, or what would be called mega churches here in El Paso, but certainly the church that I go to, we do the same thing. We have that band that's the time of worship, and then we are no our pastor is very casually dressed, and you notice that in the Kelsey Grammer character, he starts out with a suit and a tie that you see most pastors, and then it's a little more relaxed, opening collar shirt, and I think he wears like the sort of short sleeve shirt at some time, and you do have the hippie the hippie looking Jesus. I mean, he's not literally Jesus. He doesn't claim to be Jesus, but yeah, I think it is pretty accurate in how the church has become now. So I'll give them credit for that, and yeah, and I've even been to retreats where where we washed feet, we washed
Yeah.
our feet. But again, it's a symbolism. I don't think we would wash everyone's foot like every week. So I mean, they were trying to send a message that way, but yeah, I would say it's pretty accurate into how a lot of churches are now. Maybe not in trying to get the spirit is not going to lead you to say that this person has a particular illness and you're going to heal them. That is an aspect of Christianity that I don't quite understand and I don't follow.
Televangelist.
It is kind of Benny Hinn like.
Kind of
Mhm.
hostile.
Yes, and so I'm a little, I'm a
It's
little
like
more
I said,
defensive.
it's the theatrics. It's like the guys who like like I said, they say that they claim like the word of God, but then they just play on like a bunch of nonsense. Just like I said, they play more on emotion than any kind of like substance. It's like those preachers that you see that are, the ones jumping up and down and like all their congregation are dancing in the middle of the thing. It's like, but no one's actually saying anything. You guys are just like kind of nothing
Yeah,
essentially.
I'm not in a position to argue whether or not the spirit can move in that way. I'm not well versed in that, so I'm not going to dive into those waters. But I can tell you this again. I also watch for audience reaction. When Greg gets baptized, there was open sobbing in the theater
Hmm.
that I was around. I mean, I didn't cry. C.S. Johnson thought that I was going to cry. No, I rarely cry in the movie. And my mom, by the way, would have loved it. And she loved a lot of those Christian movies. Although I personally hate almost all of the God's Dead movies. I
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much hate. I think I like the first one. I pretty much have hated the rest, and I
they're
think
not
there's going
good.
to have another one. I think there's going to have one more coming
yeah.
out. So I'm thinking, please stop. Those are not good Christian movies. The this one is a better Christian movie, and it helps that it's based on a true story. Well, there were really three. You got three stories, and
Yeah.
it does affect the audience. I know there were a lot of people who were crying, and a lot of people
I,
were
I,
excited.
I I will say this because I watched this in kind of a packed theater. I mean, I was kind of surprised that so many people went out and go watch this movie. Then again, I saw that this movie had like a $15 million production budget, which kind of surprised me because usually with Christian films they go for a much lower budget because they're not expecting that big of a return. But apparently they gambled pretty well on this one, and it's at least made back its production budget budget so far. I don't know if it'll make back all of its money, but yeah, but it was a pretty strong crowd who watched this film here, and people were moved by like a lot of it, especially earlier on, where it was kind of like you saw what will happen with like some of the hippie characters when they were testing out the wild drugs of the psychedelic 60s and stuff like that. You have one of the girl almost lost her sister to a drug overdose. You had another character almost die in like a car wreck because the guy's like stoned out of his mind, driving, swerving in and out of the roads and stuff like that. So you had a lot of like more dramatic elements to it as well, which I think a lot of people kind of like gravitated towards. But there was more serious moments where you start questioning some of the motivations of the characters, where it was like you had the whole thing with like Lonnie's wife and the other character, which I thought was they were like setting up something was going to happen there
Yeah,
that was going to
yeah.
break them apart, and then it never really materialized there. I thought at one point they were going to be like, oh yeah, it turns out that this guy was basically a fraud and he was planting these people in the audience to make it seem like that he had the touch of God when he clearly didn't. And it turns out he was just letting his ego run wild more
Well,
than
yeah,
anything else.
that was a positive for me in that they did show that that all of the characters, Greg, Chuck, and Lonnie, were flawed. They were by no means perfect. I mean, Lonnie
Mm-hmm.
at one point wanted to interrupt the tent, the almost literal tent revival, because he wanted attention for himself. Chuck was a little more reluctant and maybe not push as much as he could have. Greg, that those struggles that he had with his mom, yeah, they kind of came and went, and they seemed to kind of stop the film, or at least slow it down a bit more than I would have thought
Yeah.
necessary. But yeah, I like the fact that it showed that these were flawed people. I'd like to see a Christian movie where we get to see someone who, despite believing, despite being a believer and being honestly seeking and trying to live out the Christian life, that they do fall, that they do get drunk, that they do have sex outside of marriage, that they fall into drugs, or that they that they do something that shows that they're still vulnerable to temptation. And we kind of got to see that here, because Lonnie certainly sometimes struggled with being this vessel for the Lord, and then Chuck at sometimes was a little more reluctant to go with I would say go with the flow. So yeah, we had those moments, and that's an appreciative. And just kind of a quick note: a movie that has Fleetwood Mac gets a positive from me. That's all I'm going to say on that. Hey, I was
Well,
singing along. I was singing along.
yeah, if you're a mark for like 70s music, then this movie is probably going to work better for you than some others. Um, yeah, I mean, look, there's definitely a lot of things that I like about this film. I think one of the things that I've noticed about like Christian films over the last few years is that ones that can blend in really good storytelling with obviously elements of faith and elements of like the Bible and stuff like that are typically the ones that are much stronger received with audiences. I think of a few films like off the top of my head that had elements like that. Hacksaw Ridge. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw that movie. Silence is obviously a strong one. There was a movie not too long ago called I Can Only Imagine, which is actually a very good movie that won over a lot of people. Movies like Indivisible, which also have like a very strong thing. So one thing that I appreciate with this movie is that I think they've gotten the idea that it's like, look, obviously with stories like this, we're already going to have like our core fan base, but let's actually do more to tell like a good story along with giving people like elements of Christ, rather than just like you said with the the
God's
God's
not
Not
dead.
Dead movies, where they just completely like lose the plot on like all of that, and they give you like these really just corny like plot points that really don't appeal to like anyone, don't really tell any grand like bigger stories. It's just kind of like caricatures of Christian movies at this point.
Oh yeah, and I would I
Yeah.
would also say that, like in the third God's Not Dead movie, I think they somehow tried to suggest that Jesus was a social justice warrior,
Yeah.
which was like, yeah, you're not winning anyone that way, but
No.
bless you for trying. I'm just kind of a side note. I wish Rob had had a chance to see it, because I don't think Rob is as faith based. I mean, I'm not the most faithful Christian in the world, but
Hmm.
I would like to see someone who is not as not as faith geared and
Yeah.
get their view based just not on just the film and this topic, but on the actual overall work, like the pure cinema of
Yeah.
it.
Well, what I'll say is this: the biggest problem with a lot of these movies is that they're too on the nose about faith, and which that might be there might be an audience for that. That's fine. But like for instance, there's so many movies, and maybe some of them are older, but like there's so many movies that are about like in the sense like spirituality. So for instance, The Shawshank Redemption, like that's absolutely a movie about in a sense the crucifixion and coming out clean the other side and having faith and having believing that you didn't do anything wrong and you're going to be made clean in the end. Now he literally had to escape from prison to do that, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a direct involvement of God or anything, but a lot of people could look at that movie and be moved in a spiritual sense. So I think there are a lot of ways to talk about these elements and these themes without being just literal, it being literal to Christianity. But there's a million ways you can combine those elements, and it's certainly interesting to see him try, to kind of reach more than just a sort of Christian audience.
Well,
I think Rob was afraid that if he goes to the movie, he'll end up looking like this at some point.
That's a healthy glow. I'll say that you had mentioned I Can Only Imagine. That one I think works well because it's also a biopic about Bart Millard and the creation of this song that even non-Christians have embraced for those ideas about faith and being beyond your natural life. With Jesus Revolution, I thought it was well made, well acted, maybe a little longer than I would have liked, and certainly you had almost like three stories going on at the same time: Lonnie, Chuck, and Greg, and and they blended and they combined. But I like the fact that you got to see these characters um, not perfect and that they made mistakes. Because I think a lot of Christian films, especially, and maybe C.S. Johnson does remember some of the older Christian films that I would see from time to time, especially on the Christian stations, they were just cheesy and bad. One of these days, if we ever do another movie night, I would recommend Second Glance, which is the Christian answer
No,
to It's a
we're not
Wonderful
taking
Life.
any more recommendations from you.
Oh, you should. You should. You should.
Those days are done.
Oh, stop. I will quote scripture: respect your elders and submit to their authority.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
But I thought it was well acted. I give them credit for that. I think the Christian filmmakers or people who touch on Christian themes, they are getting more savvy about what makes a good film. Not just a good Christian film, but a good film. You have to have good performances. You have to have a story that people will want to watch from beginning to end, and take some risks. Take some risks. Believe me, even now, some of the Christian films that I've seen, they're good. I still struggle with some of the Christian filmmakers, especially the Kendrick brothers, who sometimes have driven me absolutely insane, and I want to throw things at them and just say, "What are you thinking?" But I appreciated the fact that this movie knows its target audience and is willing to try to draw more people outside of its target audience. So I appreciated that, and I would say this is probably the best one that out of the three that we've talked about.
Well, which? Oh, yeah. No, I thought you were talking about like three Christian movies. Like, would you talk about two other Christian movies? No. But yeah, no, I can easily say that this is the best movie of the three that we've seen so far, and it's shocking that we've actually talked about a roll of films where they've slowly gotten better versus like the first one. So suck on that one, Marvel. But yeah, look, I think what they were shooting for this movie is like they were trying to use this film as kind of like an open door into like Christianity and faith, like hoping that someone who watches this film will be inspired to like kind of learn more, kind of like start their journey there. Obviously, you can't bombard them with everything like right out of the gate, because it's just not going to work with people, because people don't like getting bashed over the head with stuff like that. But I do think that the intentions here was pretty well. I do have some issues with like a lot of like the story. I think they could have like sharpened some of the things up are on there. But as far as this movie goes, to me, this was a very solid film. Probably one of the more solid films I've seen so far this year. I would give it a pretty strong 3.5 out of 5. Like out of me, like I said, I like all the performances about it. Like I said, I do think it is a genuine film, and I think if you go see it, you won't be disappointed. And let's be honest, there's not a whole bunch of good movies out in theaters right now. So what do you got to lose? So yeah, I'll give this one a strong 3 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I would give it a 3 out of 5 as well. I thought it was well acted. I thought the story moved well. It might for me it did feel a little longer than it should have been. I don't know how long this movie actually was, but it felt
It was
long.
just short of 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but it did feel long, and I mean, I know that it's going to end with seeing the real life people. I didn't realize that. I think Chuck died in like 2013, so it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
And
he
I
was
think,
around for a while.
yeah, and Lonnie as well. And for some reason, the name Greg Lowry does sound familiar. I can't quite place it. And you notice at the end, they did have a quick clip of Billy Graham talking to the youth and the young
Yep.
people. So yeah, I would give it a 3 out of 5 as well. It was well acted. The story was interesting, and again, audiences around me, they were crying. They were caught up in everything there. I'm not. I'm a little more stiff and formal. It takes a lot to get me to cry in a movie, but I can understand why they were impacted the way they were. It didn't really hit me as hard, but then I have to be honest. I have not been formally baptized myself, so I'm not like the greatest Christian here. I'm still wavering, but for what it is, it was well made. 3 out of 5.
And what do you give her, Rob?
Give it a chance. Why don't you just give it a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be anything good without seeing it. So, no, yeah, it's like I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't grade it.
Yeah.
Rob, I promise your head is not going to start spinning. All right, and you're not going to be vomiting pea soup.
Well, look, all movies are propaganda. Just remember that. So it just depends how good the propaganda is.
As long as you ignored the fact that Lonnie died of AIDS in real life, and everything else falls right on the line. So,
well, I mean, Dallas Buyers Club is like that, where it's like you look into the real story behind that guy. It's like,
yeah.
I don't remember it mentioning that Lonnie died of AIDS in the final scenes.
Yeah. Well, they know specifically because if they had told you what he died of, then people would have started asking questions, and maybe people wouldn't have.
Well,
probably would have had a few more questions about
that. That is a surprising fact. I will say that I did see a Liberace documentary, and they ended it with, after a very long illness, Liberace died. I'm going, you couldn't even bother saying that he died of AIDS. Like, people know of that.
Well, you can't just say he died of the gay, because that's offensive to some people. So you can't come out and say that.
So I'll have to look up the Wikipedia art now on Lonnie Frisbee. I just kept wondering, was that his real name? Because it just seems so strange. I wrote it down like Frisbee. Like, really? Like, that wasn't some made up hippie name? I really thought that was like a surprising name.
Nope. But hey, guess what, guys? We've made it to the end of our show. So that was 2 weeks more for movie reviews squeezed into one. So all I have to say is that we still owe Rob here a versus on the Nice Guys movie. So we're gonna keep that one at a future date. So that one's coming. You're not gonna get out of it.
Yes, please. I mean, I had to actually check it out from the library so I could participate. I mean, I made that sacrifice.
Yeah, well, I'm not paying you for that either. So
I'm gonna have to rewatch it because I can't even remember it. So
I think it's on Netflix or just fucking streaming on Raider.
Yeah, that's where I saw it. I think Netflix.
All right, then. Well, we're here to the end of the show, so let's wrap things up by letting you guys promote and shell out all the crap that you guys have. So we're going to start off with military haircut here, Rick Aragon. Go ahead and tell everyone what you got coming up.
I've got the reviews of the last three Best Picture nominees that I have seen. I have a back catalog of reviews that I need to work on, and I'm looking forward to the Academy Awards where I can see Angela Bassett probably lose. So that's going to be a highlight. I mean, nothing against Angela Bassett, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That and baseball season, getting ready to start that, and hopefully I'll be able to come in on Tuesdays more often. But we'll see.
Well, what's left of the baseball game, especially after what we mentioned earlier in this show.
Amen. Amen.
Rob, what you got coming up?
Yeah, so I'm still recovering from, well, not really. I'm pretty much all the way back from COVID. I had COVID the last 2 weeks, by the way, so that's why I've not been around and have missed some shows. But
and it didn't kill you instantly? I thought it did.
No,
I thought,
it was
COVID was an instant killer.
Pretty much like the flu. And so yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm back. I should have some reviews out this week. I'm trying to think like what the hell I'm supposed to review because I'm just behind. But yeah, I saw Marlowe and I saw Cocaine Bear, so I'll probably review those and have those out. And I think next week we're doing Creed 3. And I haven't seen those movies, so I have to watch Creed and Creed 2 this week to try to catch up on that fucking franchise. So expect that on the docket. And I'm getting really drunk on the Oscars. I think I'm gonna just do a live stream reaction with my roommate. But I don't know. I might have a few other people in there too. So that's coming in about 2 weeks. So
Rob,
that's what's coming down the pike.
Rob, just for the record, I do have a very large beer waiting for the Oscars. All right, just a not too subtle hint there.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great segue, Rick. Really appreciate it there. Yeah, so guys, letting you guys know what we got coming up. Tomorrow night, the Barroom Podcast is back. So tomorrow night we're gonna be talking about Bryan Cranston doubling down on critical race theory, saying that MAGA is racist because America was founded on slavery. We'll talk about him tomorrow. Mark Wahlberg is now getting attacked because he presented a movie for everything, everywhere, all at once, and people are saying because he beat up some Asian guy like 40 years ago that he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Halle Bailey, whatever her name is, the Little Mermaid girl, is basically calling everyone racist before a movie comes out, so that should go well for Disney. Woody Harrelson called out Pfizer on Saturday Night Live, but should we celebrate him or is he part of the problem? And then we're going to talk about the massive overhype behind Jonathan Majors as well. We've got a lot to talk about on him, so that's all coming up tomorrow night on the Barroom Podcast. This Saturday night, we're streaming UFC. The John Jones is back. He's going to be fighting for the heavyweight belt. We'll be talking about that one. And then next week, I'm trying to see what's happening with some of the projects that I'm working with outside of here, essentially. I might be moving some of the shows around maybe on the weekend to make it a little bit easier for everyone. They're not going away. I just got to figure out which day and time will work for everyone. So there might be a little bit of a hold on next week's shows, but just stay in contact with Society Movies on Twitter and keep in touch with the YouTube channel. So subscribe here if you haven't already. I'll keep you guys all in touch about any changes that we make. I haven't officially made them yet, but when they do happen, then you'll guys be the first ones to know. So for everyone who joined us here tonight, Double Fett, Alex vs. Evil, Duke, John was here for a little bit. I know Spencer, Cassie were here. Oz not joined us here tonight. We had a bunch of other people. Everyone who's been sticking with us for the last few weeks, thanks for joining us for another movie review stream. But it's time for us to go. It's time for us to sign off. So we'll see you tomorrow night for the Bar Room. We're gonna hit the outro. Good night. Wave to the crowd. Bye.